Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Melanie Cassar, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Phil Andrews. Today we mark the anniversary of the August offensive on Gallipoli. After months of stalemate, Australian, New Zealand, British and Indian troops attempted to break the deadlock on the peninsula by launching a series of assaults against Turkish strongpoints. The battles that followed were the largest and most costly of the Gallipoli campaign. They ended in heartbreaking failure and produced heavy losses on both sides. Many sites of the bloody struggle, Lone Pine, the Neck, Chinook Bear and Hill 60 became familiar names in Australia and New Zealand. Today we commemorate the 3rd Light Horse Brigade's charge at the Neck, part of the wider breakout actions by Commonwealth forces during the August offensive. The attack led to more than 370 casualties and more than 200 killed. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Trooper Frank Winterburn Kemp. Frank Kemp was born on the 26th of March 1885 in Yendon, Victoria, one of 4 children born to local teacher John Kemp and his wife Elizabeth. Frank received his education at the Yendon and Sorrento State Schools and grew up in the small town of Rainbow. He trained to become a teacher, like his father, and taught in schools across the state. At the outbreak of the war in 1914, he was working as a relief teacher at Elaminate State School near Colac. Kemp enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 27th of November 1914. He joined the 6th Light Horse Regiment, which later became the 8th Regiment as the AIF expanded. He was allocated the rank of trooper and began a short period of training at Broadmeadows Camp in Victoria. On the 25th of February 1915, he embarked for active service from Melbourne on the troopship Star of Victoria. Arriving in Egypt in March 1915, he wrote home to his father, "We are delighted at the thought of going to the assistance of the gallant chaps across the Mediterranean. It seems to us a very selfish act to be living in comparative luxury here. We must be prepared to make any sacrifice if the British nation is to continue to exist." Kemp did not reach the Gallipoli Peninsula until May 1915, when the Light Horse regiments were deployed without their horses. During his first months in the trenches, his regiment took on a defensive role. Life in the front lines was dangerous. They were frequently shelled and raided by the enemy, destroying sections of their trenches and causing casualties. With fighting on the Gallipoli having descended into stalemate, in early August the Allied forces launched a major offensive designed to take control of the high ground to the north and inland of Anzac Cove. It was believed this would allow Allied troops to move across the peninsula, cutting Turkish forces in half. A series of feints were organised to distract and divert the Turkish troops from the main attack. The charge at the neck, the narrow bridge of land that stretched between Russell's Top and Baby 700 across Monash Valley, was one such planned distraction. In the early hours of the 7th of August, the men of the 8th Light Horse Regiment waited for an artillery bombardment intended to neutralise the Turkish machine guns opposite them. At 4 a.m, a naval destroyer opened fire on the neck. Although it fired for half an hour, it had little effect on the Turks. The bombardment ended 7 minutes early, and the men were ordered not to charge until the appointed time of the attack. The Turkish troops, who had taken shelter during the bombardment, used this time to man their positions, readying themselves for an attack. The battle was a disaster. Waves of men were cut down by machine guns and rifle fire as they attempted to reach enemy trenches. Major John Anthill, who was in command of the 3rd Brigade, rejected an initial proposal to call off the attack. By the time cancellation was again suggested, a 4th line of men mistakenly charged, meeting with murderous machine gun fire. 154 men from the 8th Light Horse alone were killed during the charge at the Neck. Among them was Trooper Frank Kemp. News of Kemp's death reached Australia shortly after. His father wrote to one of his colleagues to tell him of his son's death. "As you can well understand," he said, "it's an awful wrench to us, for there could not possibly be a better son and brother. One consolation we have is the knowledge that no act of his ever caused us a moment's pain. In all his letters, his thoughts were for those he had left behind him." Frank Kemp's final resting place was never located. Today, he is commemorated at the Lone Pine Memorial on Gallipoli, among almost 5,000 other Australians who have no known grave. He was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Trooper Frank Winterburn Kemp, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old.
Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, Well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.